BBC.
Also today, a listener to this programme tells us about his technology for helping those who stutter, thus extending free-flowing speech even to the very poor. On this edition of Digital Planet from the BBC. Having been discussing the written word just now, well, let's now move to the spoken word and how flowing speech isn't necessarily something that everyone's lucky enough to take for granted.
I think that I've and on the whole throughout my life so far, and been quite lucky. Yes, and that it hasn't too adversely affected my life at all.
Well, that's somebody who stutters, or stammers, whichever word you choose to use. Now, struggling to get the words out is, of course, distressing. It can really hit a person's confidence. But then give that person some affordable electronics and some cheap software, and then this is how they can end up speaking.
It sometimes almost miraculously seems as though the second I turn it on, I instantaneously stop stammering. And not only do I stop stammering, but I also greatly relax as well.
Now, that marked improvement comes about by simultaneously feeding the stutterer's voice back to them through an earpiece or perhaps through their handset if they're on the phone. The technique includes delaying the feedback slightly or maybe shifting its pitch in real time. The speaker then is effectively talking in tandem with themselves. Applying feedback like this has long been known to help people who stutter, and there are all kinds of devices on the market that exploit that principle. Though effective, such gadgets, though, they can be expensive. But South Africa-based Digital Planet listener Alan Falck wrote to me, and he told me about his solution that he says is cost-effective and therefore in reach of people in poorer regions who wouldn't usually have access to the latest state-of-the-art. Well, Alan is the MD of a firm called VoiceAmp, and ever keen to talk to a planeter, and that's what we in the Digital Planet community call ourselves. I was very interested in hearing a bit more about Alan's story.
This all began some 20-odd years back when I was a student studying electronics in London, and I developed an amplifier to help my father-in-law that had cancer of the larynx. He had lost all of his ability to project his speech and had a very faint whisper. Some people that suffer from diseases like Parkinson's experience similar problems, and these amplifiers help improve their projection and in some cases their intelligibility. One of the difficulties with this kind of technology is to overcome feedback. Feedback occurs when the microphone gets too close to the speaker and you have this howling effect. I introduced a delay technology that reduces the amount of feedback, only to discover some years later that this technology actually helps people that stutter, or stammer as they say in the UK. It's well known that when a person that stutters talks or reads or recites poetry alongside somebody else, they become fluent. We also know that when people sing, they are much more fluent than if they were to speak spontaneously. This phenomenon is known as the choral accompaniment, so having another voice alongside the person that stutters helps them to become more fluent.
You could achieve that chorus effect by having somebody speak exactly the same words from the same script. As for somebody speaking spontaneously on the phone, what you do is create that chorus effect by feeding some of their voice back to them, then, is it?
Our electronic device does exactly this. It takes the speech of the person that stutters, adds a delay component so they hear themselves out of sync, almost like a long-distance telephone call that you used to have an echo effect. And we also change the pitch or the frequency of their speech to make them sound different. The brain actually processes speech in a slightly different way under this exposure to this altered auditory feedback. And in about 80% of people, they're able to become more fluent. Stuttering affects about 1% of the global population, so there are over 600,000 stammerers in the UK alone. And we hope that this technology will help them build confidence and reduce anxiety. Anxiety is the single biggest component that affects people that stutter, and this accounts for some 73% of the occurrence of stuttering.
So talk us through the actual technology. What have you actually created? Is it a box of tricks? Is it a bit of software, or a bit of both?
The VoiceAmp Fluency system consists of a small box around about the size of a pack of cards that you wear. It has an internal microcontroller that has a digital signal processor. This microcontroller allows the speech to be manipulated so that it sounds like somebody else is talking back to you, both in the frequency and the time domain. We have some other tools that help people with silent blocks that actually offer a masking effect, and all of these are configurable via a small USB cable connected to a PC and a range of PC tools. The other advantage of the portability is that we can program this device remotely to suit each individual person's characteristics of their stutter.
Right, so what you're saying is that you can use one of these chips called a digital signal processor. It's something that you can program, you can adapt it to the user, so it's cost effective. How does that come about? Is it something that do you have to modify the phone? Do you use it as an app on a mobile phone? What kind of form does it take?
The beauty of our portable devices is they are completely programmable. So we are able to customize settings for each individual, and we can even send these remotely over the internet to the person, and they can load them onto the device.
And this presumably is a cost-effective replacement for some of the existing technologies, which are incredibly expensive. Apart from anything, you're giving the software away for free.
Of course, there are many developing world countries where people don't have access to professionals like speech-language therapists, and we hope this technology will help them to maintain their fluency via using the device remotely.
The big question is, does it work? Have you tested it?
We have done a number of clinical trials with this technology in conjunction with Leeds University, and there's documentation that can be found on the web with the results. But the results are encouraging, and the effect is that people actually have an improved quality of life. We've subsequently gone on to do other clinical trials with the University of Heidelberg for both short and long term, and these are in the process of being published at the moment.
Alan Falck there, a Digital Planet listener. So if you've invented something or you're working on something that you want to tell us about, then do get in touch, by the way. So the address is digital.planet@bbcworldservice.com. So let's speak to Bill Thompson then. What do you reckon to that, Bill? Is that we heard that dramatic improvement in that stutterer beforehand, where you hear the effect the technology has when they switch it on.
No, it really was remarkable, and I'm sure there are people who do have a stutter who will find the device, VoiceAmp or something like that, will really help them. If they can get therapy as well, I'm sure that will also help them. What really encouraged me about the interview there with Alan, though, is how keen he is to do the research. It's not saying, here's this product, I've made it, I know it's going to work. It's saying, we think it will work for 80% of the people. We're doing some proper clinical trials with Leeds University, with Heidelberg, we're publishing those results. And instead of just saying, oh, here's a marvellous piece of technology, assistive technology to help people who have a disability, let's get it out there, it's actually being fed into the formal process. And that's the only way we can really make progress and really feel sure that something like this will make the difference.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it was lovely to hear from Alan, but part of me thought, well, does this actually work? Is this person making claims that can't be substantiated? But then he also sent me a load of details of the kinds of trials that he's been running with this, proper university departments, and we thought, well, in that case, let's get him on. So, but it also seems that he's doing some interesting stuff with the technology, with the software, for instance. He's saying, for instance, if the device doesn't work to begin with, maybe it needs, the pitch needs shifting or the delay needs modulating or whatever, then a software patch can just be sent over the internet to that person's gadget.
Or indeed, if you have someone who is themselves a hacker or a maker, I'm sure they'll want to take it apart themselves and look and see what's inside and make the changes themselves. Because you start to build systems now on relatively inexpensive microprocessors and digital signal processors with open source and free software that become user configurable, or at least user understandable. And that, again, is a big step forward from the closed world of medical devices that we've seen so far. So I think this is really interesting innovation.
Great, thanks for that, Bill. Right, that's it for this week on our BBC Technology TV programme Click. They're talking about wireless chargers for your mobile phone or laptop this week. Find out more at bbc.co.uk/click. Well, I'm Gareth Mitchel, the producer is Colin.